The colony was silent, a silence so deep that even the wind sounded lonely, far away from the big cities of Earth. One man lived on the edge of a forgotten world. His name was Daniel, a simple worker who dreamed of something more than just empty nights and quiet mornings. He had a small house made of metal sheets, a garden of dry soil, and a heart that longed for family. Every evening, he would sit by the window and imagine the sound of children running, the warmth of a wife smiling, the feeling of not being alone, but day after day nothing changed. The stars were his only company, and sometimes he wondered if they laughed at his loneliness. He tried to work hard, tried to stay strong, but the truth was heavy. He was one man against a whole empty planet. Then one night something strange happened. He saw marks in the dirt near his land, not human footprints, not machine tracks, but something else. The shape was delicate, like a hand with too many fingers, and it led away into the hills. Daniel felt his chest tighten. Part of him wanted to follow. Part of him was afraid still. Curiosity burned brighter than fear. The next day he followed the trail. He moved quietly, step by step, as if the rocks might betray him. After an hour of walking, he saw her. At first he thought it was a dream, because no report had ever spoken of such a creature. She was tall but thin, her skin pale blue, her hair like threads of silver shining in the sun. Her eyes were large, not human, but filled with determination. She was carrying stones one by one, heavy stones almost bigger than her arms. Her movements were slow, her body shaking from the weight. Yet she never stopped brick by brick. She placed them in a line, trying to form a wall. Daniel hid behind a rock, his breath sharp and quick. He watched her hands bleed from sharp edges, yet she kept building. Something inside him stirred, something he had not felt in years. Sympathy, respect, and a strange spark of hope. For hours he watched. The alien girl did not notice him. Or maybe she pretended not to notice. When the sun began to fall, she sat by her half-wall, tired, hungry, alone. Daniel wanted to step forward to speak, but fear chained his legs. What if she was dangerous? What if she hated humans? What if she killed him? And yet, looking at her thin shoulders, at her broken hands, he did not see a killer. He saw someone fighting to survive just like him. That night, Daniel returned home but could not sleep. He kept seeing her eyes, her struggle, her quiet strength. He thought about his dream of family and wondered if fate had sent him something he never expected. But another voice whispered in his mind, a warning voice. "Stay away. She is not human. She will bring trouble. You will lose everything." He turned in his bed again and again, trapped between fear and longing. The next evening, he carried some food and water in a small bag. He walked carefully back to the place where she was building. She was there again, lifting stones with shaking arms, her face tired. Daniel placed the bag near the rocks and quickly hid, his heart beating like thunder. The alien girl stopped, her head rising slowly. She looked at the bag, then at the shadows around her. For a moment, Daniel thought she would scream or run, but instead she opened the bag. Her fingers trembling, she sniffed the bread, tasted the water, and then ate. Her face softened, not in a smile, but in relief. Daniel felt warmth spread in his chest. For the first time in many years, he was not only a lonely man, he was part of a secret, a fragile connection. But fear still held him back. He did not reveal himself, not yet. He only watched as she ate, as she returned to her stones, as the night swallowed her again. When Daniel walked home, he knew something had changed. The silence of the colony did not feel as heavy as before. Somewhere in the hills, an alien girl was building her home, brick by brick. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt that maybe, just maybe, he was not alone anymore, but deep inside, he also knew this was dangerous. If others discovered her, they would not show kindness. If the patrols came, they would destroy her. Daniel clenched his fists and whispered to the stars, "I don't know who you are, but I will not let you fight alone." And so the hook of fate was set. One lonely human, one alien girl, two broken souls building something new. The question that burned in Daniel's mind was simple but heavy. Could two outsiders build a home together in a world that feared them both? Or would their fragile dream be crushed before it even began? The next morning, Daniel woke early, his mind still full of the image of the alien girl. He had never seen anything like her. Not in books, not in old reports from the wars, not even in the secret files that sometimes traveled between colonies. She was real and she was close. He ate a simple breakfast but tasted nothing. His thoughts were heavy with questions. Why was she here? Why was she alone? And why was she building a home brick by brick on land where no one else wanted to live? He could not stop himself. He packed more food, a small cloth for her wounded hands, and walked again toward the hills. The path felt shorter now, as if his legs knew where they wanted to go. When he arrived, he saw her working again, lifting stones, breathing hard, her skin shining under the sun. The wall was taller than yesterday, rough but strong, a line of hope in the middle of emptiness. Daniel hid behind the same rock, but his chest burned with the need to do more. The alien girl stopped for a moment, her hands shaking. She looked at her palms, and Daniel saw fresh cuts. He clenched the cloth in his fist, his heart telling him to move, his fear screaming to stay hidden. She reached for another stone but dropped it, her body too weak for the first time. Daniel heard her voice, a soft sound, almost like a broken song. She whispered something in her own language. A cry of frustration or pain, he could not tell, but the sound pierced him. He stood up slowly, his body shaking as much as hers, and stepped out from behind the rock. The alien girl froze, her large eyes locking onto him, her body tensed, ready to fight or run. Daniel raised both hands in peace, showing he carried no weapon, only the small bag of food and the cloth. His voice cracked as he spoke. "I'm not here to hurt you." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Only the wind moved. Then Daniel placed the bag on the ground, a little closer than yesterday, and pushed the cloth out so she could see. He stepped back, his heart thundering in his ears. The girl's eyes narrowed. She tilted her head, studying him like one studies a dangerous animal. Her silver hair moved in the wind. Her hands curled into fists, but she did not attack. Instead, she crouched slowly, picked up the bag, opened it, and smelled the bread. Her eyes flicked back to him, suspicious but curious. Then she took the cloth, holding it gently as if testing its purpose. Her thin lips parted and she made a sound, not quite words, but closer than yesterday. "Why?" she whispered. Her accent heavy, strange, but clear enough. Daniel swallowed hard, his mouth dry. "Because you need it," he said. The alien girl blinked, confusion mixing with caution. She wrapped the cloth around her wounded hand, her eyes never leaving his. Her voice trembled as she spoke again. "Human," she said, pointing at him. Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, human." Then she touched her chest. "Alira," she said. The name rolled like music. "Strange but beautiful." Daniel repeated it softly. "Alira." Her eyes widened at hearing her name in his voice. Something shifted in that moment, small but powerful, like the first brick placed in a wall of trust. For the rest of the day, Daniel did not leave. He did not touch her stones, did not cross into her space. He only sat nearby watching, offering water when she grew tired. Alira worked in silence. But sometimes her eyes flicked toward him, no longer with pure suspicion, but with curiosity. When the sun began to sink, she placed the last stone of the day and stood back, her body trembling from exhaustion. Daniel rose too, unsure of what to do, unsure if he should speak or leave. Then Alira bent down, picked up a small carved stone, and placed it gently on the ground near him. She said nothing, but her action was louder than words. It was a gift, a sign, a brick in their invisible wall of friendship. Daniel picked up the stone, his hand shaking, and nodded in thanks. Alira's lips moved in something close to a smile, faint but real. Then she turned and walked toward the half-built wall, curling up beside it as the stars appeared. Daniel stayed a little longer, staring at the stone in his palm, feeling its weight and meaning when he finally walked home. The night did not feel as cold, but in his heart, he knew this was only the beginning. Contact had been made, not with words, not with treaties, but with food, cloth, and a carved stone. Yet danger hung in the air. If others discovered her, they would not care about names or gifts. They would see only a threat. And Daniel now understood something terrifying and true. He was no longer only dreaming of family. He was already building one, brick by brick, with an alien girl who trusted him more than anyone else in the universe. The days that followed were strange for Daniel. He woke earlier, his steps lighter, as if the heavy loneliness of the colony had finally cracked. Every morning he packed a small bag with food, water, and sometimes tools. And every evening he returned with something new inside his heart. The silence that had once been his only companion now carried a rhythm, a quiet song of two souls building something together. Alira kept working on her wall, brick by brick, stone by stone. Her hands healed slowly with the cloth he had given her. Though scars remained, Daniel never forced his help. He only offered when she was too weak to lift a stone. At first, she shook her head, refusing to let him touch her home. But one evening, when the wind grew violent and the stones slipped from her grip, she allowed him to place a brick beside hers. It was a small act, but Daniel felt it like a great victory. Their words were few, broken by difference, but action spoke where language failed. He left water. She carved small stones with strange symbols and left them near his path. He fixed her broken tool. She placed a line of flat rocks to guide him safely across the hills. Each day, trust grew, like roots spreading underground where no one could see. One afternoon, a storm came without warning. Dark clouds covered the twin suns, and the wind roared across the empty colony plains. Alira tried to protect her half-built wall, pressing her body against the stones, her silver hair flying like fire in the air. Daniel ran forward, shouting over the storm, his voice swallowed by thunder. Together they pushed against the falling stones, their shoulders side by side, their hands bleeding. When the storm passed, half the wall had collapsed, but part of it still stood. Daniel sank to the ground. Exhausted, his chest burning, Alira sat beside him, her face wet from rain and tears. For the first time, she touched his hand, not by accident, but by choice. Her voice was quiet. "Together," she whispered, the word heavy with meaning. Daniel nodded, unable to speak, his throat tight in that ruined wall. Something stronger than stone was built. From that day, their silent friendship grew deeper. They shared food without fear. They sat close without tension. Sometimes Alira would hum a song in her language. Soft and haunting, Daniel would close his eyes and listen, imagining that it was the song of family he had always dreamed about. In return, he taught her simple human words, pointing to things, speaking slowly, repeating. She learned quickly, her voice carrying the weight of every syllable. "Stone," she said. "Water," she said. "Friend," she said, touching her chest and then his. Daniel felt tears rise in his eyes, but he blinked them away, yet danger was never far. Every night Daniel watched the sky, afraid patrol ships might pass overhead. He knew if they saw her, if they found her building a home here, they would not care about her scars, her song, her courage. They would call her a threat, an invader, something to be erased. That fear sat heavy in his heart, but he said nothing. He only built stronger walls in his mind. Walls of secrecy, walls of protection. One evening, when the suns had set and the stars burned like fireflies, Alira gave him another carved stone. This one was different. Shaped like a small circle with strange marks, Daniel studied it, confused, until Alira touched the marks and spoke softly. "Family," she said, her accent heavy but her meaning clear. Daniel froze, the word echoing through his soul. He had dreamed of family for so long, dreamed until the dream felt like dust. And now an alien girl, building her home with broken hands, was giving him a piece of that dream carved in stone. He pressed the stone to his chest. Nodding, unable to form words, Alira smiled faintly, the closest thing to joy he had seen on her face. From that night, their bond was no longer silent. It was alive, carried in every glance, every gesture, every shared meal. They did not need long conversations. Their friendship was written in action, in the way Daniel placed stones beside hers without asking, in the way Alira waited for him at the path when the sun rose, in the way they both looked at the half-built wall and saw not just stone, but a future. But beneath the warmth, shadows lingered. Daniel knew the colony could not stay blind forever. Sooner or later, someone would see the smoke of his fires, or hear the echo of strange voices in the hills. He tried to bury the thought, to hide it behind the stone Alira had given him. But at night, when she slept curled against her wall, Daniel sat awake, his eyes scanning the horizon. He was no longer alone, and that meant he had something to lose. And still, when the sun rose each morning, when Alira lifted her first stone of the day, Daniel was there side by side, human and alien, brick by brick, carving a silent friendship stronger than fear. The colony might not understand. The patrols might never forgive. But Daniel's heart knew one truth. He had found someone who shared his dream. He had found someone who refused to give up. He had found in the quiet strength of an alien girl the family he thought the universe had denied him. The days grew longer and the wall grew taller. Daniel and Alira worked side by side, their hands moving with rhythm, their bodies tired but their spirits strong. They spoke little, but every glance, every gesture carried meaning. The silence that once haunted Daniel now felt like peace, like the beginning of something he had always searched for. One evening, after a long day of lifting and stacking, They sat together near the half-built wall. The stars were bright, the air cool. The world around them quiet. Alira looked at him, her silver hair falling across her face, her large eyes reflecting the night sky. She touched her chest and said slowly, "Dream." Daniel frowned at first, unsure, but then nodded. "Dream," he repeated, pointing to himself. Her lips moved in a faint smile, and she said again, "Dream," as if asking him to share. Daniel took a deep breath, the weight of years pressing down. He had never told anyone, not even himself in clear words, what he truly wanted. But here, with this alien girl who was building a home out of nothing, his heart opened. "I dream of family," he said softly, his voice breaking. "A house full of laughter, children running, someone to sit with at night, someone to hold when the world feels empty." His throat tightened. His eyes burned, but he forced the words out. "I am tired of being alone," he whispered. Alira listened, her face serious, her eyes fixed on him as if every word was a stone placed carefully into her memory. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment, the wind moving gently between them. Then she touched her chest and said in a low voice, "Family." Daniel froze. The word was broken but clear, and it came from her lips with heavy meaning. She looked at the wall, at the stones, and then back at him. Her voice trembled as she spoke more words, slow and careful. "My people, gone," she said. "War, fire, all lost." Her hands shook as she drew lines in the dirt, shapes of stars, shapes of ships, then she crushed them with her palm. Daniel understood. Her people had been destroyed, her world taken, her family gone. For a moment the night felt heavier than ever. But then Alira lifted a stone from the ground, held it up and whispered, "Build again." Her eyes burned with determination, tears shining in the corners but never falling. "Family, here," she said, touching the half-built wall. Touching her chest, touching his arm, Daniel's breath caught. His heart racing, he saw it clearly now. Her dream was the same as his. She was not only building a shelter from the wind, she was building a future, a place where loneliness would end. That night they sat together longer than ever before. Daniel taught her new words, pointing to the stars. To the ground, to himself, she repeated them, her accent sharp but her effort pure. "Home," she said, touching the wall. "Hope," she said, pointing at her chest. "Family," she said again, her voice stronger this time. Daniel felt his chest tighten, his eyes wet, but he did not hide his tears. For the first time he cried without shame. And Alira watched, not with pity but with understanding. The bond between them grew faster after that night. They no longer worked in silence alone. They shared broken words, shared laughter when mistakes were made. Daniel showed her how to use tools more safely. She showed him how to carve symbols into stone. They exchanged stories through gestures, drawings in the dirt, fragments of words. Daniel spoke of earth, of green fields and blue oceans, of children playing in gardens. Alira listened with wide eyes, whispering the word ocean again and again, as if the idea of endless water was magic. She spoke of her lost world, a place of crystal forests and silver rivers, a place now gone. Her voice carried sorrow but also fire, the fire of someone who refused to let her people vanish completely. But even in these moments of warmth, danger remained. Daniel noticed patrol ships flying farther each week, scanning the horizon, their lights cutting across the night sky. He knew if they discovered her, they would not care about her dreams, her scars, or her family. They would see only a threat, something to destroy before it could grow. He kept this fear inside, never telling Alira, never letting her see the shadow in his heart. But at night, when she slept against the wall, he sat awake, guarding, watching, protecting. One evening, as they finished stacking the last stone of the day, Alira looked at him and said something new. "You, family," she whispered, her voice trembling, her eyes shining. Daniel's chest tightened, his breath short. No one had ever said that to him before, not in all his years of longing. He wanted to answer, but no words came, only a nod, only a smile broken by tears. Alira reached out and placed her hand gently on his. In that touch, in that single word, the walls of loneliness around Daniel's heart finally crumbled. And yet, even as hope bloomed, Daniel knew the storm was coming. The colony would not stay blind. The patrols would not stay far. Their shared dream was fragile as the half-built wall that stood against the endless wind. But in his heart, Daniel made a silent promise. No matter the cost, no matter the danger, he would not let this dream die. He would not let Alira's fire be crushed. Together they would build, brick by brick, dream by dream, until a true family stood where emptiness once ruled. The wall was taller now, strong enough to stand against wind and rain. Daniel and Alira worked together each day, their rhythm smoother, their bond deeper. Every brick carried not only weight, but also hope. To Daniel, the wall was no longer just stone. It was proof that his dream was alive. To Alira, it was the beginning of her people's return, the seed of a family she thought was lost forever. But peace on a lonely colony never lasts long. One evening, while Daniel was walking back home, he noticed something in the sky, a sharp white light moving fast, scanning the ground below. His heart froze. He knew that light. It was a patrol ship. They were not supposed to come this far, not to this forgotten place, but now they were here. He hid behind the rocks, his body tense. Until the light passed, the ship vanished into the horizon. But Daniel's chest still burned with fear. If they found Alira, they would not see her the way he did. They would call her a danger, a trespasser, an enemy. The next day he tried to act normal. But Alira noticed. Her large eyes studied him. Her head tilted, her voice soft. "Danger," she said. Repeating the word he had taught her, Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, danger," he whispered, pointing to the sky. Alira's face hardened, her hand tightening on the stone she carried. "Humans," she said with bitterness, her voice low. Daniel's heart ached, but he did not argue. How could he when her people had been destroyed by human fire? Still, he wanted her to know he was different, that not all humans were the same. So he placed his hand on his chest and said firmly, "Not me." For a moment silence hung heavy. Then Alira touched his hand and whispered, "Family." The single word carried more trust than 1,000 promises. But the patrols did not stop. Every night Daniel saw their lights scanning the horizon. Growing closer one afternoon, he heard engines, the low growl of machines moving across the empty plains. He climbed a hill and saw them, 3 patrol vehicles heading toward the hills. His blood turned cold. They were coming. Daniel rushed back to Alira, his breath sharp, his legs weak. She was stacking stones when he reached her, her face calm, her movement steady. "No time," Daniel shouted, forgetting his fear, forgetting his silence. "They are coming." Alira dropped the stone, her eyes narrowing. She understood enough. Her hand went to her chest, then to the half-built wall, refusing to leave. Daniel grabbed her arm, desperate. "They will kill you," he said, his voice breaking, but Alira shook her head, her silver hair whipping in the wind. "Home," she said firmly, pointing to the wall. "Not run." Daniel's heart cracked, torn between terror and respect. He saw her resolve, her fire, her refusal to give up again. And he knew deep down he could not abandon her. If she stayed, he would stay. If she fought, he would fight. The engines grew louder, dust rising on the horizon. Daniel and Alira stood side by side, the wall behind them, their dream at stake. When the patrols arrived, 3 soldiers stepped out, their eyes sharp, their weapons ready. "Step aside," one of them shouted. "That creature is not allowed here." Daniel's body shook, but he stood firm. "She's not a creature," he said, his voice stronger than he felt. "She is building a home," the soldier sneered. "Homes are for humans. She has no rights here." Alira stood tall, silent but proud, her eyes burning with defiance. She did not move, she did not hide. The soldiers raised their weapons, the metal glinting in the fading sun. Daniel's heart pounded. His body screamed to run, but he planted his feet. "If you want her," he said, "you go through me." The soldiers laughed. Mocking, one said, "Why protect her, human? What is she to you?" Daniel's voice trembled, but his answer was clear. "She is family." The word struck harder than any weapon. Alira's eyes widened, her face softening for just a moment. The soldiers' laughter died, replaced by anger. "You betray your own kind," the leader growled. "You stand with an alien against humans." Daniel's hands curled into fists, his fear burning into fire. "I stand with hope," he said, his voice rising. "And if you can't see that, then you're blind." The soldiers raised their weapons higher, the air heavy with danger. Alira stepped closer to Daniel, her hand brushing his. Her voice was quiet but firm. "Together," she whispered, the same word she had spoken during the storm. Daniel nodded, his body trembling but unbroken. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but not alone. And sometimes, he thought, being human meant standing against impossible odds. The moment stretched, sharp and heavy. The soldiers looked at each other, deciding whether to fire. The wall stood behind Daniel and Alira. Half-built, fragile but strong in meaning. It was more than stone now. It was their defiance, their dream, their proof that family could be built even from ashes. And so, as the patrol prepared to strike, Daniel whispered to himself, "I will not let this dream die." His voice was low, but his heart roared with it. The threat was here, the danger real, but he was ready to fight, not just for survival, but for the family he had finally found. The air was heavy, the ground shaking under the patrol's boots. Daniel stood in front of the half-built wall, his body trembling but unbroken. Alira stood beside him, her silver hair whipping in the wind, her large eyes burning with fire. The soldiers raised their weapons, their leader shouting, "Step aside, human. This is your last warning." Daniel's chest tightened, but his voice was steady. "If you destroy her, you destroy me too." The words hung in the air. Sharp and dangerous, the soldiers exchanged glances, their faces twisted in anger. The leader gave a signal, and two men stepped forward. Their rifles glowing with charge, Alira moved without fear, picking up a heavy stone and holding it like a shield. Daniel's breath caught, his heart racing. He had no weapon, no armor, only his will. The first shot cracked through the air, striking the stone in Alira's hands. Sparks flew, the rock split, but she held firm. Daniel grabbed a fallen metal rod from the ground. Gripping it tight, the soldiers moved closer, confident in their strength. But Daniel's fear turned to fire. He rushed forward, swinging the rod with all his strength. The metal clashed against a soldier's rifle. Knocking it aside, the soldier stumbled, surprised that a lonely colonist dared to fight. Alira moved fast, her body agile despite her wounds. She hurled the broken stone at another soldier. Knocking him backward, her voice rang out, not in human words, but in a cry of defiance. The sound echoed across the hills, sharp and powerful, like the memory of her lost people. For a moment, even Daniel felt stronger, fueled by her fire, but the soldiers regrouped, their training hard and their weapons deadly. One struck Daniel across the chest, sending him crashing to the dirt. Pain exploded through him, but he forced himself to rise, coughing blood, gripping the rod tighter. He looked at Alira, who stood tall, her body shaking, but her spirit unbroken. She faced three armed men with nothing but courage and stone. Daniel shouted, his voice hoarse, "We fight together." Alira glanced at him and nodded, her lips forming the word, "Together." The battle grew fierce. Weapons firing, stones breaking, dirt flying. Daniel blocked a strike with his rod, the metal bending in his hands. He swung again, desperate, driven not by skill but by love. Alira darted between the soldiers, striking with speed, using every ounce of her strength. Her movements were wild but filled with purpose. Every cry she made carried the voices of her fallen people. Every stone she threw carried the weight of her dream. The wall behind them shook as blasts struck it, pieces falling, dust rising. Daniel's heart broke at the sight, but he kept fighting. Because the wall was more than stone, it was their hope, their family, their future, and he would not let it fall without a fight. The soldiers grew angrier, their leader shouting orders. One charged at Daniel, weapon raised high. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, bracing for death, but before the blow could land, Alira leapt forward, shoving the soldier aside. The strike missed Daniel by inches. Her body hit the ground hard. Blood on her lips, but she rose again, her eyes burning brighter. Daniel's heart roared with fury. He attacked with everything he had, striking the soldier down, knocking his weapon away. Breathless, battered, but alive, the leader raised his gun at Alira, his finger tight on the trigger. Daniel moved without thinking, throwing himself in front of her. The blast hit him across the shoulder, burning pain ripping through his body. He collapsed to his knees, the world spinning. Alira caught him before he fell completely. Her voice breaking. "Family," she whispered, her tears falling for the first time. Daniel forced a weak smile, his blood dripping. "Yes, family," he whispered back. Alira stood then, her body shaking but filled with fire. She let out a cry so sharp it echoed through the plains. The soldiers hesitated, startled, and in that moment she struck with fury. Using fallen stones, broken tools, even her bare hands, she forced them back. Her movements were desperate, wild, but unyielding. Daniel, though weak, rose again, his rod still in his hand. Together, human and alien fought as one. The battle raged until the soldiers, bruised and beaten, pulled back, their leader cursed, shouting that this was not the end. Then they retreated, their vehicles vanishing into the dust. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of Daniel's ragged breaths, Alira knelt beside him, pressing her hands against his wound, her face wet with tears. "You hurt," she whispered. Her voice trembling, Daniel smiled weakly, his eyes half closed. "I'm alive. Because of you." They leaned against the half-ruined wall, blood and dust covering them. The wall was broken in places. Stones scattered, but much of it still stood. Daniel looked at it through blurred eyes. "It still stands," he whispered. Alira nodded, her hand gripping his tightly. "Home still stands," she said, her voice fierce. In that moment, Daniel knew their dream was stronger than any weapon. The fight for home was not over. The threat would return, but they had faced it together, and together they would keep building brick by brick, against every storm and every enemy. The night after the battle was long and heavy. Daniel lay against the wall, his shoulder burning from the wound. His body weak, Alira sat beside him, pressing cloth against his injury, her silver hair falling over her face. Her hands shaking but steady, she whispered softly, words from her own language mixed with the human ones she had learned. Daniel did not understand them all, but he felt their meaning, words of care, words of family, words of promise. When dawn came, the light revealed the damage. The wall stood, but cracks ran across its stones. Pieces lay scattered on the ground. It looked fragile, wounded like them, but not destroyed. Daniel stared at it with tired eyes and whispered, "Still here?" Alira nodded, her voice low but strong. Still home. For days they worked in silence, repairing, rebuilding. Daniel moved slower, his shoulder bound. But he refused to stop. Alira stayed close, never letting him carry too much, never letting him fall. Together they lifted stone after stone, their bond stronger than before. Every brick they replaced felt like defiance, like saying to the universe, "We will not break," but shadows still hung over them. The soldiers had retreated, but not forever. Word would spread. More patrols would come, perhaps stronger ones. Daniel knew it, Alira knew it, yet neither spoke it aloud. Instead, they kept building, as if each day might be their last, but also their first. Then one evening, a new sound echoed across the plains. Engines again, but louder, heavier. Daniel and Alira froze, their eyes meeting. From the horizon came more vehicles. More soldiers, this time not 3 but many. Their lights burned against the hills. Their voices carried through the wind. Alira's hand tightened on Daniel's, her lips whispering, "End." Daniel shook his head, his eyes burning with fire. No, not the end. Not today. The soldiers surrounded them, rifles raised, their leader shouting, "This is forbidden, you cannot build here. You cannot live with her, she is not human." Daniel stood tall despite his pain, his voice clear, "She is family." Alira stood beside him, her voice trembling but fierce. "Home, family, together." The soldiers sneered, their rifles aimed. Daniel's heart pounded, his body weak. But his spirit refused to bend, he shouted louder, his words carrying across the field. "We are building, not destroying. We are creating, not killing." Is that not what humanity should be? The soldiers hesitated, their fingers tight on triggers, but among them were colonists too, men and women from nearby outposts who had come to see. They whispered among themselves, their eyes shifting from Daniel to Alira, from the wall to the weapons. They saw the stones, rough but strong, standing against the wind. They saw 2 figures, wounded but unbroken, standing not with hate but with hope, and slowly the whispers grew into voices. "Let them build," someone said. "They are not hurting anyone," another added. "This is not war. This is survival." The soldiers looked uncertain, their leader growing angry, but the colonists stepped forward, forming a line, standing between Daniel. "Alira and the rifles," one woman shouted. "If building a home is a crime, then we are all guilty." Another man raised his voice. "If family is forbidden, then humanity has lost itself." The leader cursed, but his men lowered their weapons. Their eyes unsure, the weight of choice hung in the air, sharp and heavy. Finally, the leader spat on the ground and turned away. "This isn't over," he growled before ordering the retreat. The engines roared as the soldiers left, leaving dust in their wake. Silence returned, broken only by the wind. Daniel's knees gave out. His body shaking with relief, Alira caught him. Her arms strong despite her trembling. She whispered the word again. "Family." Her voice soft but unshaken, Daniel smiled through his tears. "Yes, family." The colonists gathered around the wall, touching its stones, studying its rough beauty. One of them said, "This is more than stone. This is hope." Another added, "If they can build, maybe we all can." And in that moment, Daniel realized the truth. It was never only his choice, or Alira's choice, it was humanity's choice. To destroy or to build, to fear or to trust. That night, the stars shone brighter than ever. Daniel and Alira sat against the wall, the colonists nearby, their voices warm, their hands helping to lift new stones. For the first time, the hill was not silent. It echoed with laughter, with voices, with life. The home was no longer only theirs. It belonged to all who believed in something better. Daniel looked at Alira, her silver hair glowing in starlight. Her eyes soft with peace, he whispered, "We are not alone anymore." She nodded, her lips forming the word, "Together." And as the night stretched on, Daniel knew their fight was not wasted. They had faced hate with hope, fear with family, fire with mercy, and humanity for once had chosen to build, not to break, brick by brick, dream by dream. They had turned loneliness into love. And the wall that stood against the wind was no longer just stone. It was proof that even in the darkest corners of the universe, family could be found and hope could be built, brick by brick forever.